When Lorwyn was released, we were introduced to the 5 original Planeswalker cards, one of which was Jace Beleren.
Isn't it crazy that Planeswalkers originally printed were rare? We're gonna rank every single Jace Planeswalker throughout the MTG Multiverse, and the video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We're going to rank all of the Jaces across the history of MTG. But first, if you like this video and you want to see more like it by the end of it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because we would really appreciate it.
It's the best way to support the channel with just the click of a button. Leave in the comments a tier list that you would like to see, and if it is a cool meme, or if it's just a good idea for a tier list, we might make it.
Before we jump into this tier list, I want to tell you how we're ranking these. We are going to rank these in a vacuum, all of these Jaces against themselves. While we do have a card in this set of cards that is maybe an S when it's compared to almost every other MTG card that's not Black Lotus or one of the original Moxes, these are mostly related to each other. We're going to have some A's and some B's in here that aren't necessarily A-grade MTG cards, but in the context of this list, they are an A. The other part of that is that we are going to rank these across all formats, not just a single one. So we're going to be talking about everything from Legacy all the way to Commander.
Let's get into the tier list. We have 11 cards to talk about today.
We like to start with the OG, and that's no different here. Jace Beleren. Blue 1 for a Planeswalker Jace, 3 loyalty, +2, each player draws a card, -1, target player draws a card, -10, target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard.
Yeah, so very humble card in the grand scheme of Jaces, in my opinion. The +2 is very group hug, but it's a nice way to make friends at the EDH table. It's kind of an effect that Modern rejects, despite the fact that this is nice and low cost like Modern would like. It's just not very good.
Yeah, it has seen some play across history. It's just, but now in EDH, it's very
symmetrical
humble.
Effects are just like, It's just really tough. You have to be in the right situation if you want to use an effect like that. I mean, I'm sure there's some applications where this in like some sort of wheel deck, or like obviously paired with Narset, this card is really going to thrive.
Right.
But target player draws a card, that's most likely what you're going to be using off of this card. So it's 3 mana to draw 3 cards.
Yeah, so it's a divination for an extra mana, but it'll be split across multiple turns. For an extra card, that'll be split across multiple turns. Yeah, where do you think OG Jace falls, Jake? I think we've covered it.
I think it's just a solid C.
Yeah, I think
we're never
so,
going to use that -10. Most likely it's going to get aced before it gets there.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you're not building that into a mill deck, most likely. Anyway, next up we got a twofer here. We got Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and that flips into Jace Telepath Unbound.
So, for those who don't know, this card is impacted Pioneer, it's impacted Modern, it has a small impact in Legacy. There's players that like to play it there as well. In EDH, it loses some potency.
Yeah.
However, it is very easy to flip. The mana cost is very nice. I'm sure that in CEDH, this card, just because CEDH prefers very, very, very cheap cards, it could thrive there. But in a like a regular EDH, like splashy, nice, grindy EDH game, I just don't know if it's going to make a big impact.
Right. It does get some points, though, because of its playability in Constructed. You talked about Pioneer. 100%. It saw standard play when it was around. It's a good card. It loots.
That +1 that shrinks is really nice.
Right.
I like that. And unlike the other flipwalkers, this is really easy to turn on. You know, there's a lot of cards that fill up the graveyard quickly. So flipping it is not that big of a deal.
Well, and if you're casting spells, it's getting spells into the graveyard, and then it also gives you the ability to get those spells back in a pinch if you just need that removal that you tossed.
Yeah. Imagine if it said you could cast it without paying its mana cost. That would be just bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, it's already really good.
No, I think because of its playability in 60-card constructed formats, I think I would rank it at an F.
Yeah, let's go with F.
I would put it at an A.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good enough to be an S, but I do think that it's a solid A. Just across the board because of its mana efficiency. I love the converted mana cost on it, and it's a strong card.
Yeah,
it's a strong card.
Absolutely, it is. It's one of the better Jaces we've seen printed. But if you
really do look for how can this planeswalker protect itself when it enters the field, and that -2 after you flip it is really strong, because before that, any sort of kill spell can kill Jace, but once it's a planeswalker, then it gains some protection from certain spells.
Yeah, we saw that Liliana that protects itself with the -2/-1 has seen a lot of play because it can just depower a creature. Talking about powerful cards, though, here's Jace the Mind Sculptor. Everybody knows it. Everybody's heard of it. I think this is automatically an S. It's good in pretty much any format it can be played. It even has some decent application for Commander, even though it does get powered down a little bit there.
This card, when we played originally, and this isn't the World Wake printing, this is the Masters 25 printing, but when we originally played in World Wake, this card was just everywhere. It was in the Squadron Hawk variant. It was in either blue-white control or blue-black control. Modern had just started taking off. That was around 2009,
yeah,
2010.
You're giving me flashbacks right now of
this
having
card
to play against
originally,
this card.
Oh yeah, this card, I mean, it's Fate Seal, it's Unsummon, it's Brainstorm, all on one card. It protects itself nicely, it controls your opponent's library, you learn stuff about their library that they don't even know about.
Yep.
It's just absolutely brutal, and even though it's a -12, I have seen people ultimate Jace the Mind Sculptor. It was so good that it got banned. So that's sort of like where you are, like when you compare it to like Liliana of the Veil and you go, well, it's going to fly so close to the sun that it gets banned, but it was unbanned in Modern. It's now a fair card, and it's just excellent.
Yep.
But with all of the Planeswalker kill spells, that's what was missing in World Wake at the time. You didn't have any targeted Planeswalker. Like Dreadbore was like the first time that we saw, holy crap, destroy target Planeswalker for red and a black from Return to Ravnica? This is amazing.
It was a weird time to come back to the game. I started an Invasion Block Apocalypse set and quit for a couple of years, 4 years or so, and then came back in college, and Jake and I started playing around Zendikar again, and that was a weird time to come back to Magic, I'll tell you that. You had Mind Sculptor running around, Squadron Hawk was a thing. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Squadron Hawk, and it was Cawblade, dude. It was either like blue-white control, blue-black control, or Cawblade, which was also running Jace.
Yeah.
So like all of the top 8 decks had Jace, and they just had to ban it. It was just... Yeah.
WinCon of Creeping Tar Pit. Sorry, yeah, I'm waxing poetic now.
No, the deck was sick. You had Frost Titan, you had Grave Titan. It was like you either played blue-white or blue-black. Everybody had Jace. It was ridiculous. Jace Memory Adept, 2 blue, 3 other, for 4 loyalty. +1 is draw card. Target player puts the top card of his or her library in his or her graveyard. For 0, it's just mill 10, any player. And -7, any number of target players each draw 20 cards. So, just from an EDH perspective, because this is out of range in Modern, there might be some decks in Modern that try to run control and then mill for the win. Yeah. But it is pretty unlikely. It's a pretty hefty casting cost, and when you are paying that amount, we've already talked about this, you start to think about cards like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, or like, big splashy cards. This is very humble, but in EDH I do like it. I like that the +1 can target you or your opponent, the 0 can target you or your opponent, and so in like a Muldrotha or some sort of Sultai graveyard build, I think this card can really thrive because you can just fill up your yard and get some really degenerate stuff going on.
Yeah, 100%. Even in an EDH mill deck, there are a couple that run around in the casual space, and this is an auto inclusion in there. In my mind, it's 5 cost, burn 10 cards down until they deal with it. It's really good in that aspect. As far as 60
I love the art.
Yeah, it's really anime Jace.
It's one of my favorite Jaces, to be honest.
Dark emo. Looks like he could sing lead for Panic at the Disco.
For sure. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think that it ever sees 60 card constructed in any true form. But yeah, I do think it's got some fringe EDH playability, which makes it interesting to me. And in the decks that it's applicable in, this zero
it's really good.
Could be really freaking good. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I would put it at a solid B for beautiful hair.
Yeah, solid B, man.
No, I really do think it is a solid B, because even though, EDH, you have to think about EDH from this perspective, as EDH is like, it's become the lifeblood of Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
Pioneer coming out kind of undermined Modern, and now you have this weird split of Eternal players that are like, oh, I want to play Pioneer because it's more accessible, it's a different format than Pioneer, and then you have Modern players who are like, I want to play the OG Modern, I love that all my cards have been nuked in price because there's been this split in players. But EDH is like this thing where it's like you have EDH and you have competitive EDH, and every card is worth considering, and so it's a really interesting format.
Well, it gives a lot of viability to
so much pull.
Yeah, it gives a lot of viability to these older cards. Here's one that EDH gives some viability to that is probably not that good in the grand scheme of things. Jason Genius Mind Mage, 2 blue, 4 other, +1 draw a card, +1 untap all creatures you control, -9 mind control 3 creatures.
Yeah, it's big. It's just like, it's such a casual card.
Yeah, big dumb Jace, but he does, I mean, it's an enchantment for 6. Let's look at it this way. It's an enchantment for 6 that says once per turn, either draw a card or untap all creatures you control. You have to untap 4 times? So it goes up to 6 the turn it comes in, and then 7, 8, 9, untap, activate it. So you got to untap. If I'm doing that math right, you got to untap 4 times to activate that bottom ability.
Yeah,
but
I'm not worried about
gaining
the 9
cards. Yeah,
much.
It's like just ridiculous if you get to it. But the ability to either draw a card or untap pretty much infinitely until this is dealt with is not that bad.
I love that untap all creatures, because it gives your team vigilance. So think about like some absurd Simic build or some big splashy,
big flying creatures or something.
Swing through, untap everything. It is a hefty amount of loyalty that is worth considering when you're the opponent and you're like, do I want to swing down this Jace? Because it's just going to net so much velocity.
Sure.
So the thing that really holds the card back for me is obviously the converted mana cost.
Yeah, it's never going to see, big. It didn't see standard at all, wasn't even considered.
Yeah, obviously.
It's not going to see Pioneer, Modern, any 60 card constructed. It's only considerable in fringe EDH decks. Even then, I think there's a lot of better things you can be doing with 6 mana, but it's not completely unplayable. I think it falls at like D for me.
It's definitely not unplayable. D for probably gonna replace it with something else.
Yeah, but D for what a dude. We'll leave it at D. I think that's good. Talk to us about the Planeswalker that wasn't Jace Cunning Castaway.
Jace. Sexy Jace with the ripped off sleeve. Look at that ripped off sleeve there. 2 blue, 1 other for 3 loyalty. +1, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card, then discard a card. So a little bit of looting action. That -2, create a 2/2 blue illusion creature token with, when this creature becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it. And -5, create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace Cunning Castaway, except they're not legendary. So if you could get to that -5, that's pretty brutal. But otherwise, this card kind of fell flat in the standard environment. A lot of people speculated that it was going to be a hit. It's cheap. That's the thing that you think about with these Planeswalkers. You go, oh, it's 3 cost. Can we do something with it? You think of Liliana of the Veil, Sorin Imperious Bloodlord,
Narset,
Teferi Time Raveler, Narset,
Time Raveler,
Tybalt. I'm just kidding. Tybalt sucks. But no, like the thing is Jace Cunning Castaway, it does protect itself with the 2/2, although the 2/2 is fragile. But most likely you're going to play this for 3, pump it up to 4 loyalty, Hopefully you have creatures on the board. This is clearly an aggro card.
Yeah, which is why it's in a weird place for me, because
it's a weird place.
Every time you see these blue aggro walkers, it just really doesn't stick. Look at
it undermines
Dovin
what blue does. Really.
Dovin was supposed to be cool too, adding loyalty for each attacking creature you're controlling, and it can make a 1/1 Thopter or something, I believe. It's just they just never turn out for some reason. I think that, obviously 3 loyalty for 3 mana, people are going to say, okay, well, this has got some maybe standard application, maybe Pioneer even, if it's good enough. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this was
funny
one
about
just didn't take off.
It's crazy because you look at decks. Let's think about Pioneer Spirits, Bant Spirits that run collected companies so that you could just crap them all on the field. Like, a Spirits deck that's low-cost creatures doesn't even want this card.
No, well, I mean, in most of the Spirits decks, Streamlined, they're not even Coco decks. They're just blue-white because there's enough good Spirits where you don't need this. You don't need
right,
a third
that's what I'm saying. And, like, the collected company is just to, bounce back. It's like you could play it as like a win more card, but most likely you're going to use it after all of your field has been removed. That way you can get that pressure and just crap a bunch of bodies onto the field. So that's where the velocity comes from in that deck. This is just, it seems like aggro wants it, but for some reason aggro doesn't even want it. And so despite it having a very attractive casting cost and
a very
good loyalty,
attractive art,
it somehow never found any kind of playability, which is really interesting. Now, if you do think about it with Doubling Season, Anointed Procession, any kind of effect in the future that might replicate tokens or like illusions. If an illusion were to be placed on the battlefield, create a second illusion. There's always some sort of clause. It's like it could be good.
Yeah.
But from where it stands right now, I would put it at like a C, like a D+.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it just didn't quite get there. I do like it at C just because it is a card that can protect itself. We always like on a Walker when it can protect itself when it comes into the battlefield.
A looting effect.
Yeah, it's got, it's got future Pioneer playability. It's not to say that, or historic, honestly, it's not to say that there's not going to be a deck that can run, cards like that in it. Here's
true.
one, Jace Arcane Strategist. This is another aggressive blue Walker, which just doesn't work for me. Blue 4 other for a 4 loyalty Jace. Passively, whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Draw a card for +1 and -7 creatures you control can't be blocked this turn. It looks so good. If this was a green Walker, I'd be going, oh yeah, now we're talking. It just, for me, I just don't see.
Well, it's six mana for 4 loyalty,
right?
Which is already lackluster. That's balanced out by the fact that it does have a built-in way to trigger its own static ability, which is nice.
Right.
So you're getting a small buff on a creature, and you're also drawing a card. Joel and I talked about this beforehand, but I really would like if the static ability said, whenever you draw a card, except for the first card you draw each turn, put a 1/1 counter, but that's probably pretty busted. The -7 is just doesn't work for blue. It's kind of a bummer. I'm sure there's some people that are going to be like, I have -7 with this card and won the game.
Yeah, I think for a casual, kitchen table deck, there's a lot of cards that have been printed that say draw your second card each turn lately. In the past 6 months to a year. It's got some application there in a constructed, competitive format.
It is each turn. So in EDH with multiple opponents, if you have a way, like a Mystic Remora or some sort of Temple Bell or Ristic Study, some sort of reason that you're going to draw cards during each person's turn, then you're going to generate some counters. Obviously, if you have like a Doubling Season or anything that doubles the amount of counters, like a Hardened Scales, then there's certain ways where this card is going to work.
But if you've got the money to afford,
it's just so expensive.
If you've got the money to afford doubling season in your deck, you can afford a better card than Jace Arcane Strategist
for 6 mana
to work off of your doubling season synergies. I don't think that's exactly how this card was intended.
I mean, it's not an F, but I do agree with an E.
Yeah,
E
I don't think it's unplayable, which is where we put what we put down here in Fs. But it's just barely playable. However, Jace Wielder of Mysteries is not.
Yes, 3 blue, 1 other for 4 loyalty. Also another Planeswalker with a static ability. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. So win the game built into this card. Very notable. +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Draw a card. That could be you or your opponent.
Yep.
And -8, draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So this is good. This has been played already in Pioneer to success.
Right.
This is getting played in CEDH to success for redundancy.
We talked about this in our Win the Game tier list deck, or tier list video. I would rank it the same here that I ranked it there. It's an A. It says win the game on it, and it's an attainable goal. It nets you cards when it comes in. It's 4 loyalty for 4 CMC. The -8, maybe if you get there, it's dope. Draw back up to 7. Okay.
I mean, if they ban stuff like Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact and that kind of stuff, then maybe this card loses potency. But the fact that people are able to pull it off and win with it,
right?
It just shows me that if they're able to do it now, there's going to be something in the future that makes them able to do it easier. And what does that leave the card? I don't know. It's like, I think it's an A. I don't even know what that sentence was that I just said. It was just like some mumbling. I was just saying the beginnings of sentences.
The sentence was a secret, and Jace is here to unravel it. Blue, 3 other for a 5 loyalty. Jace +1, scry 1, then draw. -2, return a creature to its owner's hand. Notable that you can target your own creatures with that, so you can retrigger ETBs if you want to. -8, you get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn. Counter that spell.
Yeah, so only 3 upticks, and that's if you don't have any sort of proliferate, and then you are at an emblem that is absolutely backbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a you win the game emblem. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I really like the scry 1, then draw a card. That's good. It's very Jace. Most of the time, the +1 on a Jace is going to have some sort of draw effect.
Right.
The -2, return target creature to its owner's hand. I think that's a very fair amount, and you can bounce some big stuff with that. So I think the line with this card is, I mean, sadly, it doesn't have Pioneer or Modern playability because it is just so expensive. I have seen some like fringy Modern decks play this card just because it has a nice package of draw and bounce.
I mean, maybe Pioneer, but again, if you're looking for a Planeswalker in that 5 mana slot in a control deck in Pioneer, Teferi Hero is that's your choice.
Especially with blue.
That's your choice. This just is strictly worse than that card as far as its abilities. And I think the only way you're going to really trigger this -8 is in EDH. Hopefully you've got some sort of proliferate build in ability available. Otherwise you've got the control package to protect it so that you can fire this off. It hits 6 as soon as it's onto the battlefield. You got to untap 2 more times to get it up to 8. Might untap 1 more time, so 3 total untaps to get your emblem, as long as you don't let it die or go down any loyalty. And so I mean, it's all about this emblem and how fairly easy it is to get to for me, while at the same time netting you a card every turn along the way. I think it's a solid B to me.
It's solid. I would say I'm fine with B on this card. It does everything that I want a Jace to do. It draws a card with a scry attached to it, and it has a way to protect itself with that bounce, and the ultimate is good. Yeah. So, I mean, the ultimate is just fantastic, actually. So
it's interesting to me how with these Planeswalkers, the EDH, a little more EDH playability can overrun a 3-cost walker that's not just like hyper powerful.
let's talk about Jace Architect of Thought from Return to Ravnica. 2 blue, 2 other, 4 loyalty, +1 until your next turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. Really nice for each opponent.
Oh, yeah.
-2, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. So like a little mini Fact or Fiction, but velocity nonetheless. And then -8, for each player, search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. Then that player shuffles his or her library. You may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. So very brutal ultimate again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But getting there is a little more difficult with this card for sure. You're not netting cards as you're ticking up to your ultimate. It will take 4 untaps if I'm reading that math correctly, because 5 and then 6, 7, 8 untap and activate.
Right.
It's nice to have velocity, but I wish that velocity was on an uptick and not a downtick. That's true. It is cool to me that it is whenever any creature, any opponent controls, it's going to debuff them just a little bit. That's a pretty cool, essentially passive effect to just have on the battlefield as you work your way towards maybe a very, very game-breaking ultimate here with Jace Architect of Thought. Plus, at 4 mana and only 2 blue, it's a very affordable card that can slot into an EDH deck with the colors available. I don't think that...
It's so funny when I see the 2 blue, 2 other, I have to compare it to Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, of course, and it's nowhere near that. But
it's not even close.
It's I don't see Modern here. It possibly Fringe Pioneer, but it's not going to be a competitive Pioneer deck that wants this card.
That shrink becomes most relevant in EDH for sure. Yeah, the +1.
But even then, it's not quite enough for me. Where does this fall for you?
For me, I would rank this at. I would rank it at like a D+, dude.
Yeah, it's meh. It's like wah. I don't really know what to think of it, but it lives roughly right here. Just because it is on the edge of being like a C+. A couple little changes in that text box and it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair because I'm like, would I rather be running it or Jace Cunning Castaway? It's tough.
It's tough to analyze that one. We've got one that's final. Jace, the Living Guildpact, 2 blue, 2 other for a 5 loyalty. +1, look at the top 2, put 1 of them into your graveyard so it doesn't go into your hand, and 1 must go to your graveyard, 1 must stay on your library. -3, return another target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So instead of -2, we do have to take it down to -3 to get any permanent, but it doesn't have to target creatures. And -8, each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, and you get to draw 7 cards.
Yeah.
I mean, few
untaps,
untaps to get to it. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially where I fall. 4 mana for 5 is very good for Planeswalker. It's not netting you any cards, but it can immediately, it's like half a Surveil. You don't get the choice of full Surveil, but it's
this
partial.
goes against what every other Jace does. I don't know why the +1 doesn't just draw a card. Maybe they think that 4 mana for 6 loyalty is a lot.
Right.
So that's probably where that line of thinking is. The -3 to me is pretty lackluster. It is any permanent, so if you have counter, this is a good way to get around pesky enchantments, which blue has trouble dealing with once they hit the battlefield. So you can bounce and counter, but at a high price of loyalty, it's only leaving 2 loyalty behind. So
yeah, off the rip, that -8 can be a very back-breaking ultimate in EDH if you're able to get it up. I mean, it comes in at 6, 1 untap is 7, 1 untap is 8, and then your third untap, you could have everybody take their hand and their graveyard, the 2 biggest sources of resource for playing the game, and you get to draw 7 cards on top of your hand. You don't even have to pitch the hand that you've got. Still, you can just kind of craft your best hand possible out of what you've got in the next 7 cards. That's decent. That's very solid, actually. It's just getting there.
It's getting there.
You're not really...
The ultimate, it's really hard for me to look at the ultimate on any sort of planeswalker, because anyone with any sort of, good awareness at the table is going to make sure to police that and monitor it. And with all of the checks and balances, most people can answer that. So I really do have to look at the +1 and the -3 on this. And it's just very, like, my gut is saying a C.
Okay, yeah, I was actually thinking D, so we can have 2 D+. How about end our Jace list? And that is what the list kind of ends up looking like right there. If I move this over here, we didn't have any unplayables, but that is where they all fell out.
Let us know what you thought of this tier list. Put it in the comments, and while you're there, if you have an idea for a tier list, consider sharing it. If it's something cool, or if it's a funny meme, or just a good idea, we might turn it into a tier list. We've already done one user-suggested tier list, which was You Win the Game.
Yep, absolutely. If you like the video, want to see more like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to hang out with us, we're streaming on Twitch and YouTube all the time. Go find us over there. And if you want to support us further, we have a Patreon, monthly giveaways, very cool stuff over there. Link is down in the description. Go check that out. Jake, I'm tapped out.
I have nothing else to say.